high school library, I worked in the law library, I volunteered at a public library, so we'll see.
I'm Beth Hoffman, and I'm interested in systems, although more of the sort of user interface design, web design side of things than the back-end database design, networking side of things. I don't really care where. But I'm also developing an interest in management.
Hi, I'm Jessica, and my library background includes volunteering at a couple public libraries, and when I was undergraduate, I worked at the library, and I'm currently working at the U of A library, not as staff, just as a student worker. I haven't decided for sure if I'd like to do public or academic, but I'm kind of leaning towards academic, maybe become a special collections librarian with Asian studies. I'm also pretty well set that I would like to do international librarianship, that is, live and work abroad permanently. So that's something about me.
I'm Connie Weatherford. I am going to graduate in December, and I currently work at the Tucson Public Library as a library associate. I still am really interested in public libraries, although everything interests me. Entrepreneurial librarianship is an interest for me too. Maybe do part-time one and part-time the other. So I'm really interested to hear what all of you have to say.
I'm Cindy Elliott, and I don't have a traditional library background. I did do some competitive intelligence and knowledge management type of stuff in the corporate environment. But I'm still pretty open as to whether I want to work in academic or public or go back into the corporate world or that stuff. So I'm sort of still trying to figure that out.
My name is Roseanne. I'm a brand new student to the SIRLS program. I'm leaning towards public librarianship right now, although possibilities are still open for other things. Possibly children's librarianship, children and youth services.
Well, which one of us wants to start? I don't know. One of us on the end.
Okay, so
let's go this way?
Sure.
Right to left? Okay. I'm Jan Knight. Some of you look familiar, well, other than the people I actually know. So I have a feeling that you were either in Stuart Wilcox's class when I talked about usability the other day, yes, which is my other hat, or you've been at one of these when I've talked about information brokering, I think. So I hope I don't bore you with some of the same information. But I was a SIRLS student. We graduated in 2000, and when I really didn't have much library background. One of the things Ruth did was she asked us to cover a few things, key things. So I made some notes so that I didn't forget to cover them. But when I started, I really was like many of you. I really didn't know much about libraries. I had worked part-time in public library when I was in junior college in California, and that was it. And I worked in the corporate world here in Tucson at advertising agencies and a publisher for a number of years. So that's my corporate background. And decided I wanted to come to library school, and I didn't know there was such a thing as special libraries, incorporating corporate and libraries and museums and such. So I got interested in that, and that's how I think I moved into what I'm doing and what I'm talking about tonight, which is information brokering. I also have another job at the university, a part-time position at the Learning Technology Center, where I do work with web design and usability and such. So I've got these two hats, and sometimes it's hard to balance, and other times it's really good when you don't have a lot of client work and you still get a paycheck for your other job. So that's something on a practical note that's good to do. I have to keep to 10 minutes, or maybe 10 to talk about. So my background in education is I have a bachelor's from Berkeley in Renaissance Studies, which was not a lot of people clamoring for that. And then, as I say, I went and worked in the corporate world, publishing and advertising mostly. In fact, Cindy and I worked together at an advertising agency here in town for a few years. And then when I got my library degree, I thought, I really would love to work in a corporate library, but Tucson doesn't have a lot of corporate libraries. And the ones they do have one librarian, and they were all filled. So I read that book down at the main library one time called 101 Things to Do with a Library Degree or something, and I read about information brokering. I read the book. Actually, I have a handout that, and on the back there's a number of books. The book by Sue Ruggie at the bottom, it's out of print now, but I read that about information brokering and decided that this was something, I recognized myself in it when it talked about the way that you work, like the things you like to do. I'm a bit more of an introvert than most entrepreneurs, but so are many information brokers, as it turns out, because we come from the research field quite often in the library field. I will mention a group tonight a couple of times called AIP, Association of Independent Information Professionals. And if you have any interest in information brokering, you should go to that website and dig around. It's not a great website, we're a volunteer organization, but you can dig around and you'll find lots of information on how to get started, how to set up a business. There's a wonderful listserv. If you have any interest, you probably should join as a student, and you get in for a really inexpensive rate. It's a great resource. A lot of the people who do information brokering, well, I should actually explain what it is, I guess. First of all, I don't use the term information broker in the private community because people don't really know what it means. They think it's insurance related or something. I don't use the term librarian, as I've mentioned to a number of people, because it carries kind of a lot of baggage with it occasionally. I do once I get to know people, but I don't go out at primary networking events and say I'm a freelance librarian or something. You'll be surprised though how many people who've worked in corporations have come up to me and who are clients and said, I loved my librarians that I worked with, I loved my library. So as a term, it's a term that information brokering is used within the library information field. It basically means you're doing research for money. So you're getting paid to do this. It's not reference, you're providing more, you're providing an actual deliverable quite often. I didn't bring any reports with me. But you're providing a lot of value added, not just the research, but some analysis too typically. Information brokers come from a number of places. Some of us have a library background or at least a degree. Others are specialists. They maybe were a chemist or they came from a particular discipline and then learned the research skills. Others start with the research skills and then learn disciplines. I'm a generalist, so I'll be working for an attorney one day. Right now I'm doing something on fantasy sports and assisted living projects. It's quite a range. It is. And 2 weekends ago I was sitting in special collections looking through documents of Motor Golf, which is an unusual thing for me. I don't do a lot of library research, but I got a call from a California attorney who needed something that was physically here on campus, and so they found me through my association. So the AIP group consists of a few hundred people nationally and internationally, and we have people who are generalists like myself and others who are specialists, and you kind of have to decide where it is you're coming from and what your knowledge base is if you want to do brokering. I tend not to do health-related research and medical-related and legal. It's just too specialized, and I have colleagues that I can subcontract to if I needed to. So as far as the types of clients I work with, again, it's all disciplines, but sometimes they're independent consultants. They're not necessarily large companies. I may have a marketing consultant who has a client she's doing marketing strategy for, and she doesn't know enough about, again, she's a generalist, so she doesn't know enough about a particular industry, so she'll hire me to do maybe an industry background and find out who are the key players in the industry, what are the trends, what are the regulatory issues that she needs to be aware of so that she can sound savvy when she goes to her client and work on a marketing plan. I do a lot of competitive profiling. I won't call it competitive intelligence just because it's the same kind of thing, but I don't do enough analysis, I don't think, to turn it into that. But sometimes people think they don't have a competitor when they're a startup, for example, or a startup company, and they typically do, or they have somebody or something that they have to compete with. So I do that kind of work, and also potentially looking at potential markets for products. So I have an inventor I just did a report for. He has a product, he's an engineer. He wants to know before he goes in and puts in $500,000 for the next step, is there anything out there like this? And I also don't do patent searches, so I gave him, much more liability on that too. So I gave him a referral for somebody who handles patent searching. And then I did the more general industry research. I'll tell you what it is, but is there something like this out there? So my work does vary very well. As far as unique opportunities and challenges, and I thought that kind of was interesting to have me think about that. The good thing is you do get experience, like in my case, working with all kinds of businesses, all industries, sizes of industries, sizes of companies. I do have some larger clients who are very established, and now and then they have an idea that they want to produce a new product or offer a new service, but they don't know if there's a market for it. Is somebody else doing it? And again, that's the kind of research that I would do. So that's a challenge. It's an opportunity and a challenge, I think, because it's like having a new job all the time. You know, you're not an expert in anything. I don't know much about biotechnology, but I've had at least 3 or 4 biotechnology clients over the time. So you become a little bit of an expert, and what that does is you're supposed to be the expert on searching. And some days I have my doubts on that too, but I think for those of you who are in, excuse me, in school and have an opportunity, Cindy and I were just talking about this, to take online searching of some sort, absolutely do it, because I didn't have that opportunity. And at the school at the time, we didn't do that, so I'm pretty much self-taught, and I go to conferences, my AIP conferences, and the vendors are there, and you get a lot of free training, and you can do free training on online. And when I talk about the vendors, I'm thinking of things like LexisNexis, Dialog. I use a part of Dialog only. I use the fee-based version of Hoover's. A lot of semi-hybrid resources, and on the back of the sheet, I wrote a couple of those. A unique opportunity too is to just get out into the business world. It isn't true necessarily that information brokers only work in their own community. I tend to, because that's where I know people, and that's where most of my work comes to me, word of mouth and referrals. So I have a website, but I don't do a lot of aggressive marketing. So it's hard. I think the website has brought in a few jobs, like the person from California. My work is mostly national, though. I don't do a lot of work where I have to look and say how many, I don't know, dog grooming salons are there in Tucson and what are they offering. But on a national basis, I'll do the work. One of the challenges that is somewhat unique when you're working for yourself, as in any case, you have to do everything yourself. You know, every stamp that goes on an envelope, I stick it on, and I do all my marketing letters. If my computer breaks down, I do what I can, and then I call my husband, who's my tech support, or a friend or something, or the AIP group. We also have a wonderful listserv where we write technical questions to each other as well as more in-depth questions. I do have a lawyer now, actually, because I wanted to put together a one-page. I wanted her to look at contracts occasionally. Sometimes a client will have you fill out a contract or a non-disclosure agreement, so you're not going to talk about your work. And the first NDA I read, it looked like I'd have to blow up my hard drive after I had done the project. So I had an attorney look at those, and she just reviews a contract for me now and then. So I keep that to be a pretty inexpensive thing. So again, all the money, everything's coming out of my pocket. So same with accounting. Actually, don't have an accountant. Probably should. But kind of get along with that. And I think a lot of information brokers, we range from being somebody who does everything ourselves to sometimes having maybe a student do a database from Outlook for you or do a marketing letter or something like that. So there are opportunities to get some help and subcontract, maybe in an internship or something like that. But I just really taken advantage of that. Another unique challenge is you're working for somebody who's probably going to make business decisions based on your work. And that's good and bad, because if they're making a really high-level fee-based $500,000 investment in something, then you feel you can charge them more because what you're telling them is going to be useful. On the other hand, it's still scary, to be honest, because you don't know what they're going to do this. So again, that liability, I have a liability and limitation statement that goes out with every proposal, which I do in writing, and every product, every deliverable that I send. And I'm not sure it would necessarily save me from totally being sued, but it would give me a long way. It does say in there specifically that I can't be held accountable for decisions my client makes based on the information I provide them, and a lot of other little jargony things. So that's kind of unique for most people who do research and information. The deliverable that I mentioned, as I said, I do a report. It's usually hardbound, has a table of contents. I customize it for clients, so depending on what they need, if they just need more of me to provide it in a rough Word document and send it over to them so they can cut and paste into their business plan, then I do that. But and I charge them a little less for that, because just somehow putting everything in a formalized document is actually very time consuming. And I do the value-added analysis. And by analysis, I don't mean that I'm going to say to them, given this list of competitors and given this potential market data, you should go out and do this product. I don't do that sort of analysis. But I will say, I'll summarize the data, I'll summarize the reports or the articles or whatever it is that I've gathered so that they don't have to plow through the 50-page report. And so there's some bulleted summaries as to what I'm seeing floating to the top. And I think that that's value added for most clients, so they can scan it and see how that works. Things I like best and least. Keeping up with the database searching is hard. LexisNexis just changed its interface probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I haven't had a client that I needed to use it for, and I haven't gone in alert. And I keep thinking I have to do that today, I have to do that, and I put it off. It's like homework. So that's kind of one of the things I like the least. I guess it's what I like the most is you do get the sense of accomplishment. You know nothing about a topic, absolutely nothing. Sometimes I don't even know what the words are all the time. So I have to do a little background research. I then give a proposal. I get the project. It's a brand new client. I go out and I do the research and put it together, and a month later, I get a check, if I'm lucky. And there's a great sense of accomplishment with that, especially if you're task-oriented, and you like learning new things, new topics. That's really one of the fun things about it. Another major challenge is marketing. And when I talk for a whole hour about this subject, I probably spend 15 minutes on marketing, because if you're not doing it, then you're unlikely to have any business. And that means being out there networking with people, going to lunches and events, and just volunteering and being on committees and letting people know that you do research, because they may not need it today, but you need to be top of mind when their business needs research. So I do a lot of networking in town, and that's paid off over the years. That's been probably my main way that I get business. One quickie thing that occurred to me today is under unique challenges is I was not prepared, and Cindy knows this, I broke my wrist in February, and I wasn't prepared to, what do I do with my client work when I only have really one hand to type, because my work is online. And Cindy actually helped me out and did a little bit of research for me. And it was just one of those situations where I started thinking, what other things am I not prepared for? Because working for yourself, you need to be prepared for the big things, but in this particular profession, if you do online research, you have to have some backup. So I haven't really put anything more in place, but it's just something to keep in mind. I have a few more colleagues now that I know who could do some dialogue searching for me if I needed to, or some of the database searching, but keep that in mind if you ever do this. You have to think of things that you weren't expecting. And literally today, I had something I wasn't expecting. I had set aside a whole chunk of time. I have a home office, and I decided to, it was like 10:30 this morning, I had a report due this afternoon at 5. So I set aside a whole chunk of time to do that, and I took a little walk outside to see what the weather was like, and I came back and noticed there's a huge rattlesnake in my porch. And so, and this is one of these bizarre little things, but it made me think about, this wouldn't happen if I had an office. So I had to stop doing my work. I was taking a 5-minute break, literally. I had to call Rural Metro, who told me to keep an eye on it. 30 minutes later, they were very quick actually. 30 minutes later, they came. But I realized there's a whole hour out of my day, basically. By the time that this was a quick 5-minute break, and those kinds of things happen all the time. It's not usually a snake, thank goodness. It's something like that, and you think to yourself, okay, I've got a whole day to work on these projects. And suddenly, you only have 5 hours. And I don't want to take up any more time, but one of the things I didn't talk about was how do you charge, and that's always a question. So maybe during the questions, if somebody wants to talk to me about that.
Well, my name is Ewbank, and I am a former grade 7 and 8 school librarian. I'm currently working at ASU's West Campus as a liaison librarian to a college of education. So I'll tell you a little bit about my career path, first of all, and how I got from A to B. And then I'll tell you some things about a day in the life of a school librarian, and I'll talk a little bit about my work in the academic library, as well as some information about working extensively in professional associations. I am a SIRLS graduate. I graduated in 2001, but I did begin my library work before that. My undergrad is from NAU, and I trained as a social studies high school teacher. My first job was in Yuma, and I taught grades 10, 11, and 12 social studies. And then due to family circumstances, I moved back to the Phoenix area, which is where I'm from. And as many teachers are in the summer, I was very And so I was living near the Burton Bar Library, which is Phoenix's main library. And so I decided to go in there, see if I can get just a little part-time job to tide me over until school started in August. And I was hired as a page. And so I spent the summer shelving books and doing page work, which is clerical. Probably some of you have worked in that environment before, or now. It's a good way to get your foot in the door in libraries. So I found that I really, really enjoyed working in the library. And then I thought, well, you know, I really like teaching too. Well, hey, maybe I could be a school librarian, best of both worlds. So I did end up working for 1 year in the Phoenix area as a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher. And by that time, I had decided I really wanted to pursue the career of being a teacher librarian. So I put some applications out. I had not had any kind of graduate coursework in library science because the state of Arizona, in order to get a school library media certification, requires a valid elementary or secondary teaching certificate, 1 year of classroom experience, and then a passing score on proficiency exam. Well, I was in the first cohort that took the exam, and I took it in the spring before I got my teacher librarian job. I was in the first cohort. They hadn't established a passing score yet, so I basically took the test, handed them a piece of paper, and they gave me my endorsement. That might tell you how much faith I have in that test as a means for making sure that school librarians know and have the skills available to do their job. I think I am a strong advocate that graduate coursework in library science is needed, and I recognize that just getting a piece of paper was not going to cut it for me. So I decided to pursue the MLS here at the U of A, and I was able to do my coursework and serve as teacher librarian at my school. So I kind of had a full-time internship the entire time I was getting my MLS, and I found that to be really beneficial. I was able to immediately apply what I had learned in my program to that position. I worked in a school of 850 7th and 8th graders in an urban school district. I was a one-person library, so that meant that when I was out sick, usually I did not have a substitute because substitutes, there's like a shortage of substitutes, so it's better if they are taking a class than if they're in the library. That's a priority. So when I was absent, the library closed. If I took a lunch, the library closed. So I didn't take the lunch. Most teachers have a planning period, and I could have shut down the library for one hour per day to have that planning period. I thought that was a really bad move PR-wise, so I chose to do my planning when there were kind of low times during the day in the school library. And I did eat, by the way. You know? It's not like I didn't eat lunch for 5 years. I just, I had a kid, go to the cafeteria and get me some food, or I had a mini fridge. And I just, I felt like it was really important that library stayed open. So that was one of the choices that I made. And again, it was about PR. It was about getting kids in that library. If that library is not accessible, then they're going to see it as kind of an icky place. So I always wanted to make sure it was open and available to students. A day in the life of a school librarian, like an information broker, is full of surprises. You are a certified teacher on staff, which means that you're responsible for discipline issues. You're responsible for supervising students, participating on school-wide committees, all of the work that teachers do. But in addition, you really get to lead from the middle if you choose to position yourself in that manner. So, for example, as a teacher librarian, I have the second largest budget in my school. Aside from the paper and clerical kind of budget or the technology budget, I had $8,000 a year that I had to make decisions on. So that gave me a little bit of power and influence with the principal and then also with the teachers, and making sure that I spent that money and spent it wisely to get the most out of it, and the resources that the students needed and the teachers felt that they needed was a real leveraging point for me in building influence in my own program. I also served on the site council for 3 years in Arizona. We have a law that says that schools are locally governed with the principal being the head of the site council, and sometimes in some district budget decisions are made at that level. So I was able to really have some influence working in that capacity. This is stuff that happens after school. It's not part of the contract. It's what you do in order to gain influence in your work environment. I was also co-chair of the district librarians cadre for my school district, and I helped to plan professional development activities for all the librarians across the district. In my 5 years as a school librarian, there was an erosion of positions in the school district. When I started in the year 2000, there were 28 school librarians for 32 schools. This is a K through 8 district. And when I left in 2006, there were 13 for 32 schools. So kind of systematically, the governing board and or the schools are kind of cutting these positions. That kind of speaks to the future of this profession. These positions are going away, and part of the reason they're going away is because there's no, well, first of all, it's actually two-part. In Arizona state statutes, there is a law that says that school libraries are locally governed by the school districts. There is no state oversight at the Arizona Department of Education. There is no state oversight at the Arizona State Library, Archives, and Public Records. So we don't have any kind of central administration as a district. Every district's doing their own thing with libraries, and they're fully allowed to do that by statute. Secondly, it's really a national issue because the current climate in K-12 is that we meet the requirements of the federal No Child Left Behind Act. And the No Child Left Behind Act is absolutely silent on school librarians. It doesn't say yay or nay. If you are not one of the required parts of No Child Left Behind, like social studies teachers or science or math teachers are required to be highly qualified, well, then you're left out. And what's not seen as mandate by NCLB currently is being cut so that the resources go to the positions that are required by No Child Left Behind. Currently in Arizona, there are 802 librarians. The data are self-reported by the school districts, so that's the best data we can get. And there are about 2,100 schools. So we're looking at 39 to 40%. Now, this translates absolutely into academic librarianship because and in my current position as an academic librarian, we're seeing that. We're seeing students coming into the university and not having any kind, or really having a lack of information literacy skills, like never even setting foot in a library kind of thing. Or I avoid the library if at all possible. Or I can get anything I want from Google, right? Okay? And you hear that over and over again. So it's really, looking at librarianship, teacher librarianship, school librarianship from a K-20 perspective where we really reinforce information literacy skills along the continuum, and we don't stop at 3rd grade or 6th grade, or if if we teach freshmen in the university, we don't assume that they got all that knowledge in high school because odds are they didn't have a teacher librarian to teach it to them. Some folks would say that the English teachers are responsible for teaching the research skills. And to an extent, that might be true, but the librarians are the experts, and the librarians have that knowledge to teach to students and how to effectively find and use information. So in 2002, after I finished at SIRLS, I decided that I wanted to enter the PhD program. I entered ASU's PhD program in education with a focus on language and literacy. I continued to work throughout that PhD program once again, and I finished in in December of 2005. So I'm a very, very newly minted PhD. In the time between finishing my dissertation and doing job searches, I decided to substitute teach for my school. And they needed a teacher. A teacher had resigned. So I finished out last school year teaching 8th grade reading in the classroom. It was kind of, it was really serendipitous because I started my K-12 career in the classroom and I ended it in the classroom. But let me tell you that, you know, for the 5 years in between, being a teacher librarian gave me such a different perspective on how to teach. So it was really interesting, and I taught differently in the classroom having had that experience. So I was job searching. I knew I wanted to get a job in higher education, and I was offered a position at ASU's West Campus, which is in where Glendale and Phoenix border each other. It's a small campus compared to the Tempe campus. There are 7,500 students there. They have a library with 13 academic librarians, and most of us do liaison work, and that is my position because of my specialty in education, and because I'm an educational researcher myself, having completed the PhD, I was hired as the liaison to the College of Education at the West Campus. And I've been in this position since July 3rd. And what I've found is that it's remarkably similar to being a teacher librarian because I'm in the classroom of pre-service teachers and graduate students who are also teachers getting their master's in ed, and I'm teaching them how to find and use information. That's what I did in 7th and 8th grade. I help the faculty with their research requests. I do literature review searches and that sort of thing for faculty or whatever they need in terms of support for their own research. It is a tenure track position, so I do research myself. That is part of my position as well, and the requirements of my position. I maintain a collection of education books. We have 17,000 titles in education, and then I kind of own a number of databases and can choose how to describe them and that sort of thing. I do individual research consults if a student is stuck or needs additional help with completing a paper. They make an appointment with me, and I help them out. And what else do? I do about 3 to 6 hours on the reference desk in our library a week. So my schedule is very flexible, and doing these sorts of activities like outreach like this are part of my position as well. The last thing I'd like to talk to you about is my involvement in professional associations throughout my career as a librarian, which has been pretty short. You know, I've really only been a librarian for 6 years or so. So I'm pretty new in my profession, but I've really been able to capitalize on opportunities because I've been involved extensively in my professional associations since the very beginning. And you talked about networking in information brokering in the private sector. Let me tell you, it's just as important in the public sector as well. If you choose to go into public librarianship, school librarianship, academic librarianship, museum librarianship, it is important. I had a professor here at SIRLS in the summer of 2001 that really solidified that in my mind. And I immediately got involved in the Arizona Library Association, which you have a brochure on. So I hope you all join if you're not already members. Student rate is really cheap. And I became an active member, so I went to the meetings and I participated in the governance. And in 1 year, I was asked to be the chair of the teacher librarian division. And so I am the past chair now, and I'm currently the president-elect of the entire association, the Arizona Library Association. One of my strengths is in leadership, and so I've capitalized on that, and that's really opened up a lot of doors for me. Working in the Arizona Library Association has led to me working in the National Association, American Library Association, as well as the division American Association of School Librarians. I chair a national committee. I go to Washington every year with Gladys Ann Wells, our state librarian, and help to lobby for school libraries. Every year I also go to the state legislature, and I'm not just lobbying for school libraries, I'm lobbying for all libraries. Talking to our congressmen about the awesome things that are happening due to their continued support, their continued financial support of libraries in this state, and of course, always trying to ask them for more money as well. So, it's really, those connections have really been beneficial for me as a young librarian to really be able to advance very quickly in my career and position myself to just have lots of possibilities open for me in the future. And of course, I also have to put in a plug for our upcoming conference. You have a postcard. There are at least 2 programs I know that some of you will be interested in. One of them is on Southeast Asian libraries, and the other one is a session on how to interview for library positions, and that's put on by folks from my library, the dean of my library, and a couple of the other liaison librarians. So I hope you come. It's November 14th through 16th. It's cheap for students, so come. Okay.
I'm Mary Graham, and I'm the head librarian at the Arizona State Museum here on the campus of U of A. And I'm also a graduate of this library school, but I graduated in 1978 as a young librarian. And I guess I came to my profession of being a librarian in a slightly different way. I started life off as an archaeologist, and I did Anasazi archaeology in New Mexico and northern Arizona, and I really that's what I wanted to do. And at the time, in the late 70s, it was very difficult to earn a living doing that. And I think it's still difficult, but it was way difficult then. And actually, a friend of the family, sort of my second dad, was a school librarian in Phoenix. And I remember sitting around the kitchen table with my mom and this fellow from across the street, and I was sort of lamenting my fate of what to do now. And he said to me, my son's a police officer, my daughter's gone to nursing school, you're the only one I have left. Have you thought about library school? and I hadn't, but I thought about it. And he wrote me a letter of reference, and I came here, and right from the field. And it was a great match because I knew right then and there, in fact, that I wanted to do archaeology, anthropology, librarian, and I knew you could do that somehow in Arizona. And so I had a great experience here, and at the time they were teaching a lot of special library courses and a lot of really interesting things. It was way before databases and that sort of thing. I think my OCLC class was like you wrote it out, like oh my do it. I mean, it was So that's a disadvantage. And so I did that, and then my first job was actually in a community college, at Glendale Community College in Phoenix, and it was a nighttime job. And I guess what I'm saying is, don't be afraid to take those part-time jobs that you don't think are really good. That was a great training field for me. I really learned a lot from those folks, the sort of the real professionals there, because I really didn't have any library experience other than data page. Right. So I knew what I wanted to do, and there were places here in Arizona that were anthropology museums. I mean, I had grown up here, and I had done my work here. So I went out and I would very boldly make these appointments to meet museum directors and just say, we're a librarian, and I think that you'd have to, And one night, working the night shift at this community college, I got a call from the director of the Herb Museum saying, well, when you talked to me about 6 months ago, I wasn't in a position, but now I want you to come in and see me. And he had been expecting a huge donation, which he had gotten, and suddenly had 30,000 volumes of a library that he needed organized. They didn't have a librarian, and they had a small reading. So that was my first job, was creating a library, which is really daunting when you've basically just graduated. But it was really fun, and I was there for a number of years. And then I had done an internship at the Arizona State Museum Library, actually when I was in library school, and really fond memories of this place. And at a meeting, I was talking to one of my old professors who said, well, Hans, the librarian, is retiring. We'd really like you to think about applying. Great. So I applied, I went through the whole, it's a faculty position, I went through the whole interview thing, and then waited 5 months to hear back, and I got this job. So I moved here, and I'm I was just telling Jim, much to my sort of horror and surprise and amazement, I've been there 19 years now. And it's amazing to me that it's gone that fast and it's been that long and it's still not boring. And so that's how I got there. And I guess what I want to say is that, if you really do have a firm idea of what you want, you really can, it is possible to make that happen. And I've been, at the same time, I recognize how extremely lucky I've been to be able to stay in a field that I like. Because what I love about my job is I'm still in archaeology, I'm just there differently. And I'm still working with the collections, and I'm still working with people that do that work, and I'm still doing that work just differently. And it's interesting because at first I thought I'd really miss it's sort of getting in the dirt kind of thing, but I don't at all, because A, it's still dirty, and Ruth is giggling because she's was one of my interns, and she knows this, how the collections are, but it's just been a really great blessing to be able to stay in a field that I'm interested in. And as the library has progressed and it has really grown, it started off as a tiny little collection, and it's over 50,000 volumes now. We're a non-circulating research library that focuses primarily on the prehistory and living peoples of the American Southwest as well as northern Mexico. And then we have a whole lot of peripheral collections that complement that focus. We circulate, we say we're non-circulating, but we actually do circulate to our curatorial staff for use in the building with the caveat that we can call anything because we are open to the public. The other thing about the Arizona State Museum is although we've been a part of the U of A campus, part of the school for over, I think, 112 years or something, we're also a state agency. And so we have mandated legal responsibilities to issue permits for any kind of archaeological and paleontological work done on any piece of state land, which in Arizona is a vast amount of land. So with that is a legal responsibility to hold forever reports that come in based on this work. And so this is what a lot of my collection has. One of our real strengths is this, what we call gray literature, the reports that, somebody may have had to do legally and say, I need 5 copies by law, and I'm only going to do that. They have to deposit a copy with us. So it's amazing the kinds of requests we get daily for that kind of weird material. So it's an interesting, for me, it's been an evolving position. We've only been online for the last 4 years. Is it been 4 years? Something like that. And which is really late coming. Well, when you were there,
I was an intern. I was an intern at the Arizona State Museum. I worked on collection development.
Yep.
And it was before development, pretty much on that.
Yeah, way before. Yeah. And so that's been really interesting. And that was also, we went online with a very robust system, the Endeavor Information Systems, Inc. is what the system we're using, Voyager, through LSTA grant, which is the biggest grant they've ever granted in the state of Arizona. And that was because of networking with the state library and all of those people up there and really working with them, letting them know what we're doing and what we're trying to do for the state. And it's been a great advantage for us. And so now we're online, and now, even though we've always been open to the public, anyone can come in and use our collection. Now we're really available. And we have an Ask the Librarian function. I was just working on that this afternoon, and oh my Lord, I mean, the talk about school kids have found us, odd people have found us, teachers have found us. I mean, it's been really interesting to get, and a little different for someone who's been in this sort of, I don't know, rarefied is the right word, but this sort of academic little sliver of, sort of speciality, if you will. Suddenly we're getting these amazing requests of odd things from all over. It's actually kind of fun. I think that's partly why it's kind of fun. It's really different now than it used to be. I think also the other thing that's similar to what these good folks have talked about is the professional association has really been instrumental in my career as I've gone through, because I was pretty much a one-person operation for a long time. I was the only librarian for many years until about, actually 3 years ago. And at that time I was able to change a classified staff position to another faculty position, lobbied for that when we went online, it became exceedingly clear that we needed a professional who understood technology, who understood cataloging. And I am a huge proponent in learning the basics of cataloging, because everyone who thinks you don't need it, believe me, you still do. From my perspective anyway. And so I was really fortunate. We were able to convert it to a faculty position. So now there's 2 of us that are faculty, and we still have a support staff person who's incredibly critical to our vision. And there's only 3 of us to run a position or a library that's open to the world now. And so it's constantly changing. It's like kind of perpetual motion. I feel as though we never quite finish. I yearn for what you have, Jan, when you finish, okay, you have a deliverable and you're done, and then you start again. But my life just seems to be this constant motion where you don't actually finish anything. It just keeps rolling, an avalanche just keeps rolling along, and you have these little moments. But other than that, so it's a challenging and very rewarding position. The professional associations have been extremely rewarding because of being alone for so long, or being the only professional, to reach out and find people that understood what you were going through, to get support. Before listservs were around, to pick up the phone and call someone and say, I just don't know how to deal with this outreach program. How do you promote the program? What do I do with the museum administration who doesn't understand this? And that's really, really been helpful. And so I'm also been a member of the state organization, special libraries for a while, and then it all got to be too expensive. So I was really lucky. I found a niche early on in the Art Library Society of North America, which sounds very snooty, and in fact can be. But it has a lot of anthropologists in there, and a lot of people who do indigenous arts. When I was at the Herd, it was a lot of Native American art, and so it really became a very, my major professional association. And again, as a young librarian, I was able to get brought up into the society really easily because it was a smaller organization. So suddenly, positions of leadership were presenting themselves, and it was a really important move for me. I've since been the president of the North American group. It's an international group, and have been involved in the chapter. We're having our chapter meeting, our regional chapter meeting, starting Thursday afternoon. At the Marriott, Friday and Saturday. We have student rates, you're welcome to come. It's a day and a half, and it's going to be quite fun. And it's an amazing group because it covers so many different content categories and subject categories, but also people who are involved in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, MoMA, people that have vast staffs, down to people that are one solo librarians. They're running entire shows by themselves. Not all the museums, a lot of people in academic situations. We have a public library component, people who do art research. So it's really that, being involved in those sorts of activities has been really helpful to my career. And it has kept my career and an interest in my career for me. And I think you meet such a diversity of folks, and you can really get drawn into some different directions that you might not have gone yourself, but when you have someone else who's going along and invites you to step up, and you take that opportunity, it really can be incredibly valuable. Challenges at ASM are kind of steady. We're a non-teaching department on this campus, even though we have a lot of PhD researchers and we teach a lot of formal classes. In fact, my colleague Marley Helm will be teaching the cataloging course here at SIRLS starting in spring. She's great, and there'll be plenty of internship opportunities. And I do most of my teaching through internships, and I've done internships ever since I started here because my internship here as a SIRLS student is so valuable to me. I really feel strongly that having that opportunity to really do something that's based in a practical reality for you as you go through SIRLS and then step out, I think is helpful. The students come back and tell me that it's one of the things that helps people get jobs, and so I really like doing it. We have an intern this semester as well, and Ruth just finished hers this summer. Yeah. And so the challenges at ASM then are these. We have a very big growing collection. We're in a very beautiful historic building, the old original Canadian University Library building, with the campus building between 1924 and 1926. The museum library is on the second floor, which was the original reading room. It's a historic room designated on the historic register. It's beautiful. It has 2 electrical outlets with a lot of extension cords. It was never designed to hold stacks. It has built in along the edges of the room are these beautiful individualized custom built-in bookcases made out of tropical Mexican and Montpone wood. The original librarian wrote a great article in the 1926, I don't remember the month, but in 1926 in the Library Journal, and she describes in detail all the architectural features of the building. It doesn't say anything about the collection, but it's on and on about Vermont marble and then Mexican and Montpone wood, you know. And the ceiling's painted, and it's all very, but we have a real issue. In fact, I'm getting an estimate now from a structural engineer because our floor is not designed to hold this weight. It's dangerous. I suspect that we are maxed out. A number of years ago, there was a big master plan about a renovation of the building, and a structural engineer walked in and literally stopped dead, gasped, looked at me and said, we need to talk. And we had to move our freestanding stacks like 6 inches this way or that way so we could get them on these beams going through the floor. And he basically said, no more, you can add no more. Well, we haven't really added any more stacks, but the stacks are packed. And so the internal part of this building, there's 5 levels of original library stacks with the marble floors and the steel, structure. It's full of artifacts. So one of the things I'm having to do now is really lobby for our collection as a bona fide part of the collections. The library is part of what's called the collections division, so we're in there with the archives, the photography collection, and all of the artifacts. But we really haven't been given our due. And now we're at a crisis point. We really need some attention. And we also have huge windows that face south that have screens on them. However, in terms of humidity and heat and ultraviolet, you can cover these light bulbs with UV filters, but when you have 20-foot windows facing south, you're not really doing much of a good job that way. So we have a lot of issues that have to do with a really beautiful room. And we also have some issues having to do with the variety of documentary collections and how the entire museum has evolved, and how we all use these collections, and how computer technology has changed how we do everything. So I'm really pushing to merge all of the documentary collections, change the reading room back into sort of a reading room to enable and upgrade it. And so that researchers would have one place to come to for the museum to get all of that documentary research done and not be sent around to 2 buildings in 5 or 6 different places. But that's a hard thing to sell to a group of museum professionals and curators who are kind of entrenched. I mean, it's a really interesting phenomenon to try to be a librarian like all of us and work within sort of another profession too, and try to find that happy meeting ground where you can be a museum librarian professional and have your colleagues sort of see you as one of them and still appreciate that you have unique challenges and responsibilities. So all those things are both, as Jan said, both challenges and opportunities, and kind of make for a fun part of the job, although Ruth has seen me quite frustrated at times. But I think there's an interesting progression, and as we keep evolving, keep moving along, I'm really excited about what might be coming next. We have a new head of our collections division. So we have a young man who's an archaeologist who's a recent PhD and who's coming with very fresh eyes, fresh vision, willing to look at things really differently. So this has given us a little bit of a spurt. And I think it's going to be a really interesting few years. The museum is also moving down to Rio Nuevo, the exhibition part and the public education part. The research functions will stay here on campus, but that also opens up an entire, hopefully, space in the building, but also different opportunities to look at our audiences and help determine who our audiences are, which is part of what Ruth's internship was helping us with. So I think I answered all your questions. I'm not entirely sure. But I would just say that museum librarianship probably isn't as wide open as some of the other forms of librarianship, just because, much like schools, they often are the first to go. However, there are plenty of, if you're willing to not stay in Tucson, then there's lots of really interesting opportunities, particularly internationally. And so I think that, I guess what I would encourage you to do is, as you sort out what you want to do in the professions and the slices of the profession that you really are interested in, then just stay focused on that. And it's amazing what can happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, questions now.
I have one. For going into the library world, if you're looking at specializing, what's more important, a second degree or relevant experience? Or experience/knowledge?
You know, from my perspective, I mean, I have to say, being as I'm the oldest librarian here, one of the things I was told when I was hired, because I was actually I found out later that the search for my position I have now was me and another fellow who had a PhD in anthropology and a library degree. And they ended up choosing me. And I asked him later, like, why'd you do that? Because I would have thought in an academic situation. And part of it was a different kind of experience and someone willing to get in there. They were afraid the PhD wouldn't be willing to get in there and do the work. Because it was really needing some work, like some real in the trench type of work. And they wanted someone who understood the content. Still to this day, I'm the only one in my group of 3 people that has the literature background and understands that much. People learn it, you can learn it. But I think I know it a little differently, particularly the archaeology, because I have used it a little differently. So I'm not sure if that still is true, to be really honest with you, because I've been there a long time. And I know from my ARLS colleagues that a lot of people are getting second place master's degrees. And then along with their MLS going after it, and that sometimes, when I look at job descriptions, I'm seeing that is often a requirement in a museum or a specialized collection kind of field.
Yeah. But I would definitely say from a systems perspective that overlooking the second master's and knowing the various computer languages and that sort of thing is definitely a plus. We have a digital design and delivery librarian at our institution, and she was hired solely on her very expansive knowledge of Perl, Cold Fusion, the ability to manipulate that back-end stuff in order to provide products for us liaisons to work with our students and faculty virtually. So yeah, I think it depends on what the position entails. We recently hired a business librarian that has a second master's in public administration, but she had also worked for a hedge fund in New York City. So she had the combination of a second master's plus actual experience getting business information for a firm.
And I think to go off of that, a number of my colleagues have MBAs.
Yeah.
And there are times when I wish I did. And I have business background, but it's not quite the same. So, I'm not good at looking at a financial balance sheet. Don't put me in charge of that. So some of my research can kind of lean toward areas that I'm not as comfortable in. So you kind of have to do a little homework or talk to people who are business majors and such. But, so it's not mandatory, but it's useful. But on the other hand, the part of my work experience in my previous corporate life that was incredibly useful is I was a client liaison between the advertising agency and the clients. So, and on my other job in publishing, I was a purchaser of printing and publications. So I've been on both the buying end and the client end of this client-vendor relationship. And that's been totally the best experience. I know how to deal with clients most of the time. And I enjoy it. And so for me, that work experience, probably I would not, in fact, I have colleagues who say that their part that they're least comfortable with doing this is the actual day-to-day working with the clients. They want to do the research and they don't mind putting it all together, but God, don't make me talk to the client. So sometimes those people pair up with somebody who is maybe a good marketer or has an information background research background, but can be a little more out there and, but, a little bit of both, I guess, for all of us.
I have a question. For those of us who are looking, or, going to start their career soon, are there any things that you can think of particularly that stand out for you that would be good for those of us to make sure that we get experience in before we look for positions or as we're looking for positions?
I would really encourage you all to consider internships when you're here at SIRLS. In an area that you think you might want to go into, or an area that you feel you just want to know more about, or one that maybe you don't know anything about that you didn't know. I just think that if you can do that, that would be really valuable for you. I mean, for nothing else, you'll get a great letter of recommendation.
Yeah.
But having something solid that's kind of real, that's out of the classroom in a way. For me, anyway, when I get hiring people, we look for that.
I've noticed on a lot of some of the jobs that are asking for 2 years of experience and stuff. So are there ways to get around that?
If it says
first job.
If it says desired qualifications, 2 years of experience, I think you're golden. As long as, because it's usually like a mandatory and a desired. So totally apply for those anyway and demonstrate why you would be the best at that job. And I'd also add that just paying attention, looking at the hot leads from ALA, if you're interested in academic librarianship, the Chronicle of Higher Education, it's chronicle.com. Pay attention to the patterns and the trends. If you're going into academic librarianship, there's usually a search committee that it's like a faculty position. So my interview lasted for 10 hours. Okay, I don't know, how was yours? Was it a full day?
It was a full day.
Yeah. So know what the if you go in academic, it's not going to be a 1 hour thing with a resume. It's a very extensive
You usually
process.
have to do a presentation.
Yes.
Something that they'll ask you to prepare ahead of time in front of a whole bunch of.
That's right. Yeah, you have to do a presentation. It's multiple interviews, panel interviews, interviews with deans, interviews with the provost of the college, et cetera, as well as doing a presentation. So it's quite a bit of preparation. And so pay attention to the requirements of the various specialties.